Back live. It's just Alan Karpick and Tom Dienhart. We're lamenting the fact that Brian Newbert's down there covering basketball and working as per usual. Golden Black Live, though, at a Friday edition. It's almost always a Friday edition. Segment 2 will be Tom Mitchell today. Purdue's, I believe it's Associate Athletic Director for Compliance, and a lot of things to talk about him, not only gambling and all the challenges that brings to it, but we'll hit that. Chase Young today obviously will be a topic as well. A lot to hit there. And then, of course, segment 3, Tom and I will look back at some of our favorite Purdue sports memories growing up in this town and being around it for a long time. It's always a fun segment. The problem is we do that off camera all the time. We don't waste time, but we enjoy doing that. So I want to thank our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn. When tomorrow's a big day, stay at HGI tonight. Triple X on the hill, but on the level. Purdue tradition since 1929. Tom asked Dave Shondell last week about what his favorite. Maybe that's what we have to ask everybody when they come through. And, of course, State Farm agent Trent Johnson. We can ask who's your favorite State Farm agent. That would be Trent Johnson. Saw Trent this morning, and I think he's got a high school football game he'll be doing tonight. So we thank you for watching and all the folks at WLFI for making this happen. But, Tom, big game for Purdue. You'll be hitting the road after this, heading up to luxurious hotel in Evanston for the night before an 11 a.m. noon start our time, or Eastern time, I should say. What do you expect tomorrow? I mean, out of Purdue and Northwestern.
Well, I tell you, I have no idea, Alan. The way this season's gone, I mean, not breaking news for anybody who obviously follows Purdue football, but you know what? For some reason, I have a quiet confidence about Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I know the kid inside and out, but I've got a chance to speak with him a few times here the last week or so. Extremely poised young man. Seems like a great human being, the kind of guy you'd like to have as your son.
Yeah. And
from a skill set wise, which obviously is what matters, Jeff Brom says he's got a good arm. His arm's probably better than Jack Plummer's arm, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Not Elijah Sindlar level, but he's got a Big Ten caliber arm. Nice release too. He looks the part walking through the door. 6'3", 210, 215 pounds. Just not real mobile, not real athletic. So, as long as he gets protected, I think the offense has a chance to score some points. That's going to be the key because we've seen this line get better as the season goes on. King DeRue's coming on, running the football again. I think there's enough. Brom can scheme it up, and I think Purdue can squeeze out 17 to 21 points.
Over-under in this game is 39.
Whoa.
I think Purdue is still a 2-point underdog, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It is, and maybe because we tend to follow it from the Purdue side, it does. I have much of the same feeling about Aiden O'Connell, just in terms of the way you go back and watch what he did last week and just chucking the ball down the field. He was really good.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he for the Illinois game as well, Al.
Yeah.
I went back and looked at the play-by-plays the last two games. His last couple series against Illinois, his effort against Nebraska. I think he was 12 of his last 14 passing for over 100 yards. He has a touchdown, no interceptions too. And again, he's the guy who came in and engineered the game-winning drive. Hit some big passes along the way as well. So, again, hats off to him being put in a very trying, difficult circumstance to come in there against the Nebraska team, keep his poise, and lead Purdue to obviously a must-win if they want to keep the bowl hopes alive.
Well, and Jeff Brom talked about about Aiden being a good personality. The players like him.
Respect him.
Just being around him, kind of a humorous, kind of a, I wouldn't say happy-go-lucky, but it seems to be a guy that just gets along with his teammates. Maybe that's the definition of a good walk-on. I don't know.
Yeah, he's and Jeff Brom, like I said, used the word they respect him.
Yeah.
And I think that means a lot when your peers respect you. And I did a story on Aiden this week.
Yeah.
I went back and talked to his high school coach and a guy who's the head coach now at Stevenson High School who was on the staff then, and also spoke with Aiden's personal quarterbacks coach, a guy named Jeff Christensen, who actually played in the NFL, went to Eastern Illinois. He's the guy who started the Eastern Illinois tradition in a lot of ways. Sean Payton and, of course, Tony Romo, Jimmy Garoppolo. And Jeff Christensen worked with Jimmy Garoppolo, worked with Kirk Cousins. So Jeff had a lot of good things to say about Aiden. Always talked about their work ethic. Kid keeps quiet and just came in and did his drills. and being good was important to him. So, again, a lot of high praise from those close to Aiden back in Lincolnshire, Illinois, Stevenson High School. So, again, he's got his feet wet. He's got enough weapons around him. He's going against a Northwestern team that, as we all know, Alan, 1-7 overall, 0-6 in the Big Ten. I got one question for you. Where were you on October 5th, 2019?
Yeah.
Because that's the last time Northwestern scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
It's going on 13 quarters.
Yeah.
They've only kicked 2 field goals the last 2 games.
You know, as well respected as Pat Fitzgerald is as a football coach, and he did talk this week about, hey, we'll be back. Maybe not to the level he wants this year necessarily, but this is a very proud program. The Wildcats have also had an onslaught of injuries.
Yeah.
Maybe not to Purdue's level, but you got 3 defensive guys. Sam Miller not going to play tomorrow. Newsom, the defensive back, corner was probably not going to play out for the season. And they've had some injuries in that defensive line. Their front 7 has historically been a real strength. That seems to me, though, to give Purdue some opportunity. If Purdue, the David Bell is healthy, we don't know that. We don't know some other things heading into that matchup tomorrow at 11 o'clock Central Time.
Yeah, Jeff Brom said after practice yesterday, I was a little surprised, game time decisions on David Bell and Jackson Anthrop.
Yeah.
I know David Bell been dealing with a shoulder issue going back to the TCU game. I'm guessing that's still the issue.
Yeah.
Maybe something else has cropped up to this point. Something different, who knows? He was at practice. I did see him. So, yeah, that's a concern for a wide receiver unit that's already struggling without Jackson, or should say without Jared Sparks. So, again, the weapons are limited now for the quarterback, Aiden O'Connell. But like you said, Alan, Northwestern's been dealing with some injuries defensively. Still have a top linebacker in Patty Fisher, a very good defensive end, and Joe Graziano as well. But it's the offense where Northwestern's really been crippled.
Yeah.
The quarterback spot, they're not even sure if Hunter Johnson's going to play. Of course, he's a 5-star transfer from Clemson. It probably will be Aiden Smith, who really, I guess to be kind, is pedestrian at best. So, okay, we talked earlier this week, Alan. This is a Northwestern offense that's averaging 9.8 points a game, dead last in America. The last time Northwestern averaged less than 10 points in a season, you've got to go back to 1983 when Dennis Green was the head coach and Sandy Schwab was the quarterback. Some of you out there could appreciate those 2 names.
They are what they say they were, or they were what they say they are, or whatever. I remember.
That Dennis Green.
Yeah, 1983, and I think they paid a visit to Ross H. Stadium in that year. I can remember in the late 70s with Northwestern. A Northwestern team in 1978, I think Rick Venturi was the coach, and had a Purdue team on the ropes that had Northwestern was in the middle of its 3-year losing streak and almost beat a very good Purdue team actually in 79. So, yeah, you have to, this is Pat Fitzgerald, like I said, this is a team that was in the Big Ten Championship last year. Yes, that was a surprise that they worked their way into that position, but they did work their way into that position. You have to give them credit for doing so. And nobody's going to look past them, but this is a team that really has been amazing what a difference a year can make. They just have struggled to score. And that's always, not always, but it has typically been a challenge for Pat Fitzgerald's team. They've always been really tough defensively, but they've always been kind of a plodding, like to run the football. They've struggled to do that this year as well. They just haven't had anybody that's really stepped up at a level that can make them as formidable, and that as a function also of an offensive line that's struggled. Yeah,
that's a line that's tended to struggle during his tenure, and like you said, Alan, they've sort of established that reputation of being, like you said, offensively a tough punch in the nose, physical team. Although their quarterbacks have been a little underrated.
Yeah.
Mike Kafka,
among
others, of course, Clayton Thorson, of most recent vintage, that they could throw the ball a little bit. And that's really what they're missing this year, is, again, that consistency at quarterback. Again, the line has not been up to par either, and there's no playmakers at wide receiver as well. You remember Dwayne Bates.
Oh, yeah.
Guys like Lee Gissendaner going back even further. But there's nobody on the perimeter of the Northwestern offense to really make defenses respect them. And last week, they went to Bloomington and lost, I think it was 34-3.
Yeah.
I know that's an IU team that's rolling, but again, just to sort of epitomized the struggles offensively for Northwestern, but to see their defense get shredded like that. I think was a surprise. So, yes, you're correct. That's been the offensive MO for Northwestern under Fitzgerald. He's gotten a lot of pressure around over the years to shake his staff up, but he's an extremely loyal guy. Mick McCall's the offensive coordinator, stands by his side. Of course, Alan, the defensive coordinator is Mike Hankwitz.
Purdue,
who, of course, worked
got his big. He started at Arizona, but got his big chance really at Purdue with the junk defense.
Yep, and so that's a guy that's been at Fitz's side for years too. And Pat sticks with those guys, and he gets a lot of heat. But he knows these guys don't get stupid overnight. Like you talked about, Alan, this is a team, like all teams, you go through your ebbs and flows, and the injuries are hitting the Wildcats this year.
Yeah, certainly, and that's been the case. And the defense has been good, but it's been dinged up. And Stevie Scott last week for Indiana had a pretty good sized game against them, gashed them on a couple of times that made a difference in that game. Turnovers is always the case in football, makes a huge difference. Purdue and Northwestern are not far separated in terms of turnover margin and a negative number associated with that. But that's really been not been a characteristic of a Pat Fitzgerald team and a Jeff Brom team, but both teams have really struggled with that this year.
Yeah, one of the phrases out of Jeff Brom's mouth, every time you ask about Northwestern, he always says they don't beat themselves.
Yeah.
He's exactly right. That's always a trademark of those Pat Fitzgerald teams. They don't beat themselves. They don't turn the ball over, commit silly penalties, make mental errors, give up a lot of big plays. So, again, you're right. That's something that's been missing this year for a lot of reasons. And, again, a lot of that has to do, like we said earlier, because of injuries. And, like you said, your fortunes change so much from year to year to think that you're in Indianapolis one year, the next year you're going to be in the cellar. And the Big Ten West has been crazy this year. A couple huge games this weekend, Alan. You've talked about them on our podcast, of course, up in Dinkytown. You got the unbeatens playing Penn State and Minnesota. And an equally as big game between Wisconsin and Iowa.
Yeah, huge.
Basically an elimination game. Whoever loses that game is out of it because the winner still gets their crack at Minnesota. And if Minnesota loses, who knows, maybe that Wisconsin-Minnesota game at the end of the year is a de facto Big Ten West championship game.
Yeah, Minnesota is going to, at least from a loss standpoint, if it only loses 2 more games, will get a share of the West championship.
Yeah.
But if they obviously lose head-to-head to Wisconsin, the Badgers would have the opportunity, or Iowa, as it turns out, would represent in Indianapolis, and they would get the fun of playing Ohio State or Michigan or whoever's over there.
But I think for Purdue fans, being in the Big Ten West, this is another example of how much gratitude Purdue should have for being in the Big Ten West. We had Northwestern last year win it. Minnesota is on the precipice of maybe winning the Big Ten West. We've seen Iowa win the Big Ten West. Obviously Nebraska, Wisconsin. My point is, I think any of the 7 schools in the West, if they're hitting it just right, can win that division. Conversely, though, I think you would agree, Alan, the Big Ten East, I'd be hard-pressed to ever be talked into thinking that Indiana, Rutgers, or Maryland is ever going to have everything lined up to the point where they can win that division.
And I would agree, and I would say forever.
Probably forever,
it's just not going to happen. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Indiana slid its way through in 1967, the miracle Hurricane Hoosiers, so to speak. But they had to, that year, again, there were only 10 teams in the league. Michigan was down, Ohio State was down, Purdue couldn't go to the Rose Bowl that year, and of course they beat Purdue in a relatively fortunate way. But yes, Minnesota has. They have obviously Penn State, 4th-ranked Penn State at home.
Yep.
Then they have to go to Iowa, they have to go to Northwestern, and then come back against Wisconsin.
At home.
But if Minnesota beats Penn State, they're going to be hard.
Yeah.
You got to think they still have a tremendous chance to get to Indianapolis, because if they're good enough to do that, I think they're good enough to hold their own against an Iowa or Wisconsin in one of those 2 games, and certainly that's what's going to be an interesting storyline to watch. All right, defensively, Purdue has taken some steps forward, certainly the last couple of weeks, in my view. Northwestern one would think it's really going to be interesting to see, because if Hunter Johnson doesn't play, they've really struggled to throw the football even when Johnson's played. They're only completing, or is it Aiden Smith maybe only completing 47%?
He is, yeah.
I think as a team, though, they only have They have 11 interceptions and just 2 touchdown passes. That's almost Mark Vitale numbers, and that's going way back. There'll be some of you out there that'll remember that from a Purdue perspective. But my point is that what do you do if you're Nick Holt? What do you try to get done defensively? Do you stack the box and just force them to throw the ball on you?
That's what you got to do, obviously. You laid it out right there, Alan. The struggles Northwestern has had throwing the football. So that's what you got to do. You have to get that extra man in the box, take away whatever semblance of a running game Northwestern has, get Northwestern in 2nd and 8, 3rd and 8, then you come after Aiden Smith, you know. I think that's what you have to do. Maybe get some turnovers as well.
And one thing, even though Purdue's turnover margin has been down, they've made some big plays. I mean, the interception by Trice, Corey Trice last week was huge at the time where Nebraska could have really put Purdue in a real bind. You make a play, and the whole complexion of that game changed, and I think that's an interesting story. The interesting thing, Purdue's had some interceptions. Crazy, because fumbles sometimes are almost a matter of chance, and Purdue just hasn't had. Opponents' teams have not been loose with the football, and that they're coached to strip and do all those kinds of things, but just hasn't happened.
You'd think just by happenstance and mistakes, mishandling the ball. I've marveled at that too, Alan. Go back to last year. I'm going off the top of my head, but I think Purdue only recovered 4 or 5 fumbles.
Right.
This year, I think it's 2.
Yeah, crazy.
And sometimes you get that in a quarter.
Yeah.
But again, it's just been, like Alan says, one of those crazy things where the fumble recoveries haven't been there for Purdue. But I will say this, defensively, Alan talked about this a moment ago, the defensive improvement. This week in my deep dive on the website, I went back since halftime at Penn State on October 5th and looked at the defensive numbers for Purdue, compared them to their season total numbers, and there is market improvement basically across the board except in rushing defense. So again, that defense, again, it's not a steel curtain, but it's done pretty well when you consider the injuries they've dealt with. No Neal, no Bailey for basically the whole season. Cornell Jones has been banged up. And I think they've done a good job. They've kept this team in a lot of ball games, including last week, Alan. I think we talked 2 block punts, 2 turnovers off those 4 miscues. I think Nebraska only scored 3 points. So again, that defense has done a pretty good job responding to adversity and sudden change.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, we're going to take 2 minutes. One thing on the weather report for tomorrow, it will be perfect Evanston, Evanston, November weather. High. Kickoff 39 degrees, partly cloudy, not any precipitation. It'll get up to a balmy 44 by the end of the football game, at least as it's predicted now. So we'll take a short break, bring in our featured guest. It should be some interesting conversation with Tom Mitchell, and we will do that in 2 minutes on Gold and Black Live.
Dive into the new Badaya, only at the XXX Family Restaurant in West Lafayette. Ladies and gentlemen, gold medalist David Badaya will now attempt to